Hey everybody, welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast. It is Friday. We're super excited because it's Friday, like we always are on a Friday, because why wouldn't you be if it's a Friday? Did I say Friday enough?
You say Friday more times.
Yeah. You know, if you say it enough, it becomes believable. And I think if you say it like 3 times, people start to adopt it as a truth. I think I've heard that, there was a comedian, he had a great line. He's like, I think I've heard that if the average person at night swallows about 18 spiders at night and when they're sleeping. And then if you say that like 3 times, then somebody else will hear it and go like, oh, yeah, I think that's actually correct. I think we all eat spiders at night in our sleep. We don't know it. Yeah. Then people put their own flavor and spice on it. They're like, yeah, but you also have like other bugs that you're chasing down at night too when you sleep. So it's not just that, it's you're eating 20 insects on an average per year. So it's like, okay.
that's pretty horrifying.
I usually eat them when I'm awake.
Well, on this episode of the podcast, we want to ask a question. Would you like to play a game, or would you like to listen to a podcast?
Or both.
Was that you, or was that a sound effect?
That was me.
Awesome. Nicely
done. Okay. No, thank you. Yeah, on a budget, man. But happy Nerd-o-ween, everybody. This episode is marketing lessons from horror movies. What can we learn from horror movies? So for this episode, we're talking scary and spooky marketing strategy. How can you join the fun in this season as a brand? The world is obviously a scary place, so let's learn from these horror movies. They are watched and remembered for, tropes and jump scares, tactics, colorization, on how they were filmed. And this is all spawned franchises, so I'm a believer that if you're a franchise, you're a brand. It may be a stretch, but, if you've got fan devotion, you got all this stuff going for you, it's a recognized brand like Annabelle, The Conjuring, all of that. World building is not just reserved for Marvel Studios. So, question for you guys, what is your favorite horror movie, or what horror movie has left an indelible mark upon you that to this day you will not watch it?
Since I'm kind of the old man of the group, I have less of a favorite horror movie than a favorite horror studio. Hardcore horror fans will probably recognize this, but I'm a huge fan of the 50s, 60s, and 70s Hammer Studios horror films that were produced in England. It's the studio basically that made Peter Cushing and oh my goodness, I've gone completely blank. Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, household names. Christopher Lee for his portrayal of Dracula, and Peter Cushing for Van Helsing, but he also played Dr. Frankenstein in several Hammer horror films. So they kind of became household words because of their work with Hammer Studios. So I have a favorite studio and not really a favorite film. The film I cannot watch again is a classic, and it's The Exorcist. It was the most unnerving, unsettling movie I have ever seen. It made me so uncomfortable. It was an ordeal to sit through it. It did make me a little afraid, but it was just so darn unsettling. The incarnation of evil overtaking this little girl, and the things that were coming out of her mouth as far as the dialogue and other things. It was just so uncomfortable and unsettling, and I was happy when it was over. And I won't watch it again because I don't want to feel that way again.
All right, I understand that. I can relate to that. Not with that movie. I mean, I actually like watching The Exorcist, and my favorite Exorcist movie is Exorcist 3. I think there's some great scenes in that. As a film person that likes to watch movies, I don't want to classify myself as a film critic, but it's just got some great scenes in it that's totally worth watching. I love Scott as the actor who's playing the cop.
Yeah, George C. Scott.
Yeah, I love him. For those that don't know who he is, there was a famous movie he was in where he played Patton. General Patton. But he is amazing in that. It's just a great franchise that has had a television series that I thought was very well done, that surprised everybody with its connection to the very first movie that was on Fox, I believe, or NBC, one of the two studios or stations that ran for a couple seasons. First season was really good. Second season was kind of like trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. Didn't really work out. Had Gina Davis, who was actually playing the grown-up version of the little girl, and it was her daughter now that the possession was occurring in. So it's worth checking out if you really like the franchise, if you love Exorcist. Of course, we all know the backstory about how the movie had some problems and there was some spooky stuff that was happening during recording. Kind of like right now, there's about a bunch of bumps and stuff going on. Either Jonathan fell down the stairs or he's just adjusting his mic. But
I am using my mute button because we didn't want to hear what was in the background.
An ambulance during a podcast that's Nerd-o-ween and is about horror movies?
No, just a loud car.
Oh, never mind.
Just a couple clowns.
I hate clowns.
That's well, I'm sorry, but I don't know if it falls in, I guess it falls into the horror category, but probably the earliest movie I saw and one that kind of stuck with me is, you guys know I'm not an avid movie buff, but it is, always one of my go-tos around this time of year. I don't know why. I don't like clowns either, but for some reason that movie just feels like nostalgic. The first one.
Which movie?
The clown movie.
The miniseries.
No, he's referring. Was it
the miniseries in the movie? You're right.
Yeah, there was a feature film.
Two.
There's
2 of them. 2, yeah.
Yeah, I like the new one. I think the one that they reimagined. I liked it a lot. I watched it. I found it disturbing, but at the same time, I liked it. I haven't seen the sequel as of yet. I may watch that as my Nerd-o-ween celebration tonight or tomorrow. But I didn't know you were afraid of clowns, man. That's a revelation.
Who, me or Jonathan?
Jonathan.
Me? I'm not. Yeah, I'm not afraid of them, but I don't know who likes clowns. Who the hell likes clowns?
That is funny because it seems like, nowadays you ask anybody about clowns and everybody goes, I hate clowns. I don't like clowns. Clowns scare me. When was the time when people really liked clowns? There had to be one.
Probably before it came out.
Probably.
I would have to argue that the people that really liked clowns are the people that would do bull riding.
They're probably fond of them, but I bet they still don't like them.
Yeah. I always get a kick out of watching them drop into a barrel as the bull charges.
I have a theory that anybody that has to paint an expression on their face might have some deep-seated issues they need to deal with.
Well, and there's certain ways that this is something that I learned, and I can think watching the special about clowns with was it John Wayne Casey, who would dress up as a clown, and they said that the paint you used had any sharp points around the eyes or mouth or anything that would be considered a clown that's not friendly and not good. And so clowns don't typically paint their makeup with sharp points on the edges of features and stuff.
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but for our listeners out there, if you want to care to look that up and let us know, again, you know where to go. nerdbrandagency.com/podcast. Hit the form. Let us know. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. If you tell me I'm right, I'll wave it in front of everybody's face and go, nah, 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 nah.
You're wrong.
But if you tell people enough 3 times, if you say it 3 times,
you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Well played, sir.
I win.
Well played. You do.
Oh, we're back.
Well played.
To the frequency argument again.
Yes. So it was yours. So okay. So the horror movie that for me, my answer is it's actually a couple. I'm with you, Mitch. I don't like the ones about possession and stuff that kind of has a backstory that's true. Obviously, because there is a backstory to The Exorcist where that actually is a true event. It was actually a little boy. It was not a little girl. There's a house that the house is real. Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans went to it and they did some acting, I guess, or investigating, whatever they want to call it. and they did an episode with that. So, but there was a movie that was called The Fourth Kind. And, you know, when I watched the movie, I thought I was going to see an alien movie. I thought, well, I'm going to watch a movie about, you know, an abduction because, you know, everybody remembers Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you know, or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch just another iteration of this thing. Fourth Kind. All right, sure. Well, I was wrong. Oh, my gosh. That is actually about that. It is, and the scariest part of the film is at the end when the possession is happening. They actually did record it, and they actually show it wasn't the actor who was acting it out. It was actually the footage of the woman that was undergoing the possession and what happened. And it left her paralyzed permanently. Her family has never been found to this day. The police that pulled up to the house actually watched her family being taken in the air out of the house. This is a cop that saw this. Went into the report and everything, and they kind of did that in the movie and showed how that happened. And wasn't real footage, obviously, of that being captured, but dealing with her later in the possession and all that, that was actual footage. Scared the crap out of me, some of the things. And it's like what you said, Mitch, about the Exorcist movie. It's what was said that really made the impact for me. Not just because it was actually footage, but it was also what was said. It was just disturbing. And I find that kind of being a trend. If you want to have a really good horror movie, there's tactics like I talked about. There's these tropes. You know, you got the jump scares. You got how it's colorized. You know how dark it is, or whether everything's in a blue shade. If you've noticed, most horror movies, especially those out of the 90s and 80s, they were all in a bluish tint or hue to add to the effect of you know, the horror that you were watching. But there's some movies that we're going to go through here, and we're going to talk about that, how they went through and did their marketing, what they taught us about that, what they can look at. We'll include these on our episode of our podcast blog post that we'll do. I'll put these in there. And the first one is Annabelle. So there's certain things people are afraid of. So the tropes are just kind of a quick view: dolls, older people, children, clowns. Those are the four tenets of a horror movie that you want to make people afraid of, and these movies we're going to go through actually do those things. So the first one is Annabelle. So people are afraid of dolls. So check that box off. All right. It's shot very dark. Like in the series, it's just a dark film, you know, as far as how it's made. But in some places, as the franchise went on, especially in the last one, but it does rely on jump scares. One of my favorite scenes is when she's in the bedroom and she's looking at the doll, and the doll raises up in the air, and then the camera angle is shot in a way where the demon is actually holding the doll and is slightly behind it, offset, adjacent behind it, and the camera just kind of slightly pivots, and you see him, and then he runs toward her, and it's blacked out screen. Yeah, isn't that
It happened to me last night.
But the viral marketing is what they did. So what we learned about Annabelle was viral marketing. Somebody grabbed the doll and they replaced it in subways. So you can imagine going down to a subway to catch a train, and then there's Annabelle standing there holding onto the rail like she's coming up the steps. Stuff like that would happen. Have you guys seen any of the Annabelle movies? Have you ever seen do you have a movie that you know of that had a doll in it that was sort of like that, or any viral marketing campaigns that you've seen that were used to promote films that you have that you like?
I mean, the doll film, obviously, Chucky.
Yeah, exactly.
That whole series comes to mind. I think I remember seeing some stuff about the Annabelle, you know, kind of guerrilla tactics. But I haven't seen those movies. Like, I'm not a big horror buff personally. I feel like my imagination takes the movie, and then I just like walk around my house thinking like, oh crap, what if it actually happens? Although like I know it's not real, it's still like I envision like it happening after the movie, which I guess is part of the fun for some people. But I'm kind of like, that's not my type of fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there is. I mean, not to get off on a tangent, I think there's a flavor to modern horror that's distinctly different than what you would define as classic horror. I mean, going all the way back to the Universal Studios in the 30s and the 40s. Then you had kind of a resurgence of horror movies, but they were generally more science-based because everybody was definitely afraid of an atomic bomb. So generally monsters and creatures revolved around, exposure to radiation and things like that. And then the beginning of the space race, so there'd be a lot of science fiction type stuff. But it just, to get back on point, it just seemed to me that modern horror just seems it seems to be seated so much deeper in the really dark places of the human psyche. Mm-hmm. Much more so than, vampires and werewolves and things of that nature, which, while we all know they're not real, it was kind of that thing when you were a kid, you're always afraid of whatever it was under the bed. But now whatever's under that bed is much more sinister than what you could ever have imagined a few decades ago. Yeah, it's creepy. Things like obsessed dolls.
Yeah, like Freddy Krueger and all that whole series. The classics that go back to that era. I feel like that's very different now. You get things like kidnapping and torture and stuff like that.
Much more fantastic, much more fantastical, much more outside the realm of reality. Now things seem to have one foot in the real world. That it's like, well, maybe, that could maybe happen, which to some degree maybe makes viral marketing for these things so much more effective.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to ask, because you brought up Chucky, and I'm glad you did, because I totally forgot about that. There was a campaign where they actually took, I don't know what the politically correct term is, but a person that was of shorter stature and put them in a Chucky outfit and would hide them in trunks of cars, would hide them in, this is on YouTube. And they would actually, the mother thought, there was a mom that thought this was so funny. She actually asked this person who was dressed as Chucky the doll, head to toe, to get in the back of her car so that when her daughter got in it, jump out and scare the daughter in the car. And the daughter got so scared she pissed herself. So, and they would just run around, chase people everywhere. And it was just hilarious to watch. I'm sure it was not hilarious to have that done to or be done upon you. But at the end of the day, it was like, it really kind of raises awareness about the film, about the franchise, that it's one that's not gone away. I never got into the Chucky franchises myself. I never really cared much about it. It just, I don't know. And then this latest iteration, I have utmost respect for Mark Hamill, but him voicing Chucky was, I don't know, didn't work for me. For those that know Mark Hamill, I love him as the Joker. I love him as obviously Luke Skywalker, at least the one I remember from, episode 4, 5, 6. But, he's done other voice acting roles as well. But, when he got into that one there, I was just kind of like, I don't know. It just didn't seem to fit. Viral marketing, though, has always been, I think, a good pull. Guerrilla marketing, I don't really know how clear you could delineate between the two. But it is a way to definitely raise awareness about your brand. It is a way to kind of get people to notice something if it's unique enough, but it's also probably, the biggest risk, I would say, is, to do. So,
yeah, I don't know. I would say that the guerrilla, the line is kind of the guerrilla marketing happens offline, and then the viral is what extends to the online, but I guess you could make a case either way. But we've talked about it at length, I think, on a few episodes, that it's great when it works. It's and it's horrible when it flops, and it is a risk. Yep. It's a business risk for sure.
Right. So moving on to the next film that we're talking about, Hereditary. Now, Hereditary. This shows people are scared of older people. There's also another film that's called The Visit. I think it's The Visit, and it's about this mom who puts her kids on a bus to go visit grandma and granddaddy, and they've never met them. The kids have never seen these people, and so it's their first time meeting their grandparents, their mom's parents. And so there's these two older people that are waiting off the bus, holding a sign, whatever thing, you get the shtick. They take them home, and then they proceed to have just these weird things happen. Just really weird events occurring from these people. And it's not a supernatural horror. It's actually, spoilers from here forward. If you don't want to hear about this premise and the ending of that, you just fast forward a few minutes in our podcast. But basically, the older people are escaped from an old folks' home, and they have like a dementia. They have some problems, and they are not the grandparents of these children. They killed the grandparents when they invaded the home. The older people that were there that were the legitimate grandparents were murdered by them, and they assumed their role. And so Mama doesn't really know, like, that these people are not there. The webcam on the computer is intentionally sabotaged, and when she finally does see a picture from one of the kids showing them, she's like, "Oh my God, that is not my mom and dad." And there you go. So, and it's very scary kind of a thing to think about. Hereditary now. Hereditary is totally supernatural. Hereditary is a movie that has some very visceral scenes in it. There's a man who's burned alive on scene. There's, the movie makes you think to focus on an element in the scene, because the Hereditary also contains a child. Okay, so again, people are scared of dolls and older people and clowns and children. So they actually have two of the tenets of this built into this movie. And the child is seemingly disturbed by how she kind of kills a bird and plays with its body, and it's weird. That's all I can say. And you think, like, okay, this demonic presence, whatever this is that's going on between the mother and the woman who is the daughter of, or it's generational. So you've got this little kid, you've got the mother, and then you've got the grandma. And so there's things that are happening between the three. And so it's kind of like when the mother died, the mom of this little girl is like obviously struggling, I think, with grief. I think that's part of the premise of this. And so, but there's a psychosis or something breaking down. It actually turns out to be something in their family that is supernatural and demonic. And that's kind of the way it goes. And it just kind of really reveals itself at the end of the third act as to what's going on. And it's about the demon that was Pan coming back to the world, to rule and take over. It just kind of gets into that realm a little bit later. But how it builds up to that, it will freak you out. It's got more. It's not all full jump scares. It's not how it's shot, but it's done really well. It is a very good movie to watch. If you're a horror fan, I recommend watching it. But on the marketing side, and for you guys, this movie teaches us not to trick our audience. See what I did? Trick or treat. Yeah.
I got you. We're with you.
Yeah. So this movie was billed as one thing, but it was actually something else. That's basically the simplification of this argument, is that the audiences, when seeing the trailer, they didn't really know or realize what they were getting into. And that's why I brought up The Visit versus this movie, because The Visit was actually more psychological with these escaped mental patients that were elderly, and there was really nothing supernatural, whereas Hereditary looked like it could be answered by that, but was not. And so, but the marketing in of itself was completely wrong. So I don't know, John, I'm going to put this in your court. Why should you not fool your audience and trick them like that?
Do you need a dissertation? I mean, if you want to tie it to like some kind of theory, the kind of the basic concept of quality and value when you're getting into marketing and consumer expectations and things like that. I mean, value is a function of quality and price, and quality is defined as how well are you meeting your client or your customer's expectations. So, I mean, just a basic breakdown of if you're presenting something that it's going to have this expectation and then it doesn't, you've shot your quality in the foot. I mean, that applies to anything. And so, on a very basic level, misleading your audience to think about your product in one way and they receive it in another way is not going to go well. I think everybody can kind of make that conclusion.
There's only far you can only use misdirection so far before you completely before you present to your customer what they expect and get the unexpected. I mean, you can do that in a pleasing way, but to your point, I mean, you can only take them so far before it's like, wait, this wasn't what I paid for. It's one.
Right.
One
I mean, you can pleasantly surprise people.
It's one thing to surprise people. It's one thing to say, oh, this isn't what I expected. Oh, aside from, oh, wait, this isn't what I bought. This isn't what I was buying. This isn't what I thought I was buying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that this film did a few of those things. It tried to put itself up there, scarier than The Exorcist. It tried to build this anticipation that it was going to be another pop culture thing. Now, I get it. I say, and I stand by saying in recommendation of watching it, it is a very good film. Will it be a pop culture thing? No, it's not near that. I think it was just kind of done because it was seen as an indie film that needed the hype. And, if you hype up something that's really not true, you're going to fall flat. I think it's going to hurt more than it's going to help.
It would be like McDonald's coming out and saying, we've got the best burger in the history of humanity. And then you go there, you get a McDonald's hamburger, and it's fine. It's good. Don't get me wrong. But when you go to McDonald's, you expect a certain thing. And 99% of the time, you get that thing. And that's why, you can make an argument that in that respect, in that context, McDonald's is high quality. Because your expectations always being met. You don't go there expecting a high-class steak dinner. You go there expecting a McDonald's hamburger, and they deliver. And that contributes to the value of the product overall. Again, with value being quality, functional quality and price. And again, quality being how well the expectations meet the customer's expectation, or how well the product meets the customer's expectations. It's, kind of,
well,
you can't mislead your folks.
That spurs into kind of, there was a time, and I think maybe there still might be to some degree, where it wasn't just a certain film, but a studio. Back in the 30s and 40s, when Universal was like the master of the horror film, you just expected a certain flavor and a certain quality and certain qualities in Universal horror movies of that era that that expectation was so well set up that it became a characteristic of the brand of Universal. You wonder. I mean, you look at like today's studios. You've got Legendary Studios, which produces a number of genre type films. They, of course, they're the ones who produce the new Godzilla movies. They're the ones who produce the Hellboy franchise. Certain studio.
Yeah, we ain't gonna talk about that one unless it's got Ron Perlman.
Exactly. Which those you could say those have definite horror qualities. I mean, but that was Mike Mignola's intent from the beginning. But anyway, not only do you have a certain expectation from a certain film, you have a certain expectation from a certain studio for the type of films that they make. So it's funny how that that quality expectation. It's not just that you expect high quality, you expect certain qualities. And that's why you go back to it again and again and again. And that's maybe why the Annabelle French fries.
French fries?
Right.
McDonald's.
Yeah,
I got you.
I don't want to touch those French fries.
It's why people revisit that that franchise again. And to some degree, maybe, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, could you consider Stephen King oriented films a brand, a franchise in itself? That people see a Stephen King property, adapted for the screen, is that a brand? Do people have a certain expectation of that? That goes all the way back to The Shining.
I think it is because it's an IP. It's something that's built on. Some of the films that Legendary, if you look up on Wikipedia, you can go and look at their filmography. Back in 2005, it was Batman Begins, Superman Returns. Then you got Lady in the Water. You're kind of like, huh? Did things go off the rail? But there's films that came after that. There's a really good film they made, We Are Marshall. It's a true story about, the university and what happened. Matthew McConaughey, I believe, is in it. 300, another Zack Snyder film. The Dark Knight, Watchmen. The Hangover, that was a surprise comedy. So there's a lot of things. Like, I'm looking through their list of films that they've done, and, obviously you could probably look at their picks, I bet, of the directors and figure out that leads to a lot of the reasons for their success. Because as I'm looking through, there's not a whole lot of horror movies that
right.
Legendary has actually done. They did do The Thinning, and I think that's a Stephen King. Yeah. And so, but as I'm looking through, I watched Crimson Peak. I thought that was really good. I thought it was a decent one. To your point, Kong Skull Island was on there. Pacific Rim, Jurassic World. And they've got Godzilla, King of the Monsters as well. I believe that 366, something between 300 and 400 million is what it made. And the next movie coming up is Godzilla versus Kong. Yep. And then you got Dune. I like Dune, but Dune is, I'm a little anxious about Dune. I know we're kind of going on a tangent here, but I'm anxious about Dune because Dune is always very difficult, I believe, to take from, the books to any live action in any way, because it's sort of like, I guess it's like a comparison between Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek, The Next Generation. One is a space battle, and the other one is a 5-year series on, political debate. And so Dune is kind of like that. Dune's a lot of politics and talking and what happened, and it's 30,000 something plus years in the future of humankind. And so, it's got a great backstory. If you're interested in it, I do recommend Dune. I think Dune is a great series and franchise. They were so great. Yeah, the television series they did a couple of those. Those were actually, I thought, very well done. The original, very first movie that had, since I mentioned Star Trek, Patrick Stewart in it, was okay. It's okay. That's all I can say about it. I think the television series did much better. But anyways, that's on a tangent. That's not horror related. So, but yeah, I think the quality has to be there, and we can't tease your audience like we said. But to the next one, now we're getting into clowns. Now we're talking about.
I gotta go.
It taught us about merchandise. Get your merch. Get your merch. So, if you have a brand, and we've kind of done this too. We have merchandise. We've got glasses. We bought boxes. The glasses go in, and gifts and things like that. How important is merchandise to a brand?
It depends on how closely you can tie the two together. Some things just. I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head. I'm going blank, but it depends on how closely you can tie that item to either the experience of that film or something directly related from the film. Of course, it's not horror, but you look at Star Wars and the merchandise that spawned. Holy cow! That's like the epitome that you can hope to attain. But you have to touch people, I guess, in such a way that the experience of that film or films was so pleasant and was so was so pleasant, so satisfying that they want to in some way relive that experience in another way. So to me that's the only way merchandise works.
I think there's that angle as well as the communal kind of camaraderie. you see somebody with a Star Wars shirt on and you're also a Star Wars fan,
right?
You've immediately got that connection. I think there's got to be that level of, I don't know. It's got to be widespread. It's almost got to be a cultural phenomenon, or I guess it could be very niche. That's another reason people wear merchandise. They want to find people who are fans of a very narrow niche or a narrow film.
Kind of like you're in on the secret.
Right. I think there's got to be that community aspect. People wear things that they want to, it's an expression of who they are or what they're interested in, and they're trying to show that off,
and that's
publicly.
Probably the value of where merchandise can come in for things like horror, because you don't necessarily want to relive that experience again, and put your own imagination to it like you do with toy lines, for example. Although there have been a line of Freddy Krueger toys, there's been a line of Jason from Friday the 13th toys, so maybe that kind of blows that idea out of the water to some degree. But I do think there's probably huge value in that, being in on it, kind of, I know something that everybody else. It makes it special because you're part of this special group that gets it, that understands it, that enjoys it and appreciates it, and that makes it special because it's not like everybody else. It's our own little club, our own little group of people that have something that other people don't have. We appreciate something other people don't.
So here's something that's I'm hoping is valuable for the entrepreneurs and business owners of our audience in that segment. I think there's always this debate about what kind of merchandise do I get for my business? What is the best? What will do the most for me? What's the best one or kind to invest? And, you go to these websites and you see all these little trinkets and things, and it's just, merely slapping your logo on it, but there's a cost. And, there's a trend of doing the masks, having the logo on your mask, during this time in the pandemic. That's kind of a big thing. We do sunglasses with our logo on it. We haven't gotten any masks yet. There's T-shirts, there's pins. If you're let's just say brick and mortar business, what do you all think is the best kind of merchandise that could be benefited to buy for your brand to kind of show it off? Now, for me personally, I can start this off with NerdBrand. It's the glasses, it's T-shirts, polos, it's stuff you can wear, wearables, apparel. Would we do pins? Probably at some point, just because, it's a very low end type of thing to kind of get. Would we do coffee cups? No. Would, bandanas or something crazy like that? No. I just kind of, I understand it's got to be planned depending upon who the business is and what the business is. But what do you all think is the best low end kind of grab that everybody should be thinking of?
I think it very much depends on the business. I think, I've got a magazine right next to me from a printing company that's just full of merchandise. And I thought that a cool one that maybe we could do eventually for the podcast is earbuds, branded earbuds. They've got all kinds of things in here. Popcorn bowls.
The earbuds are great for podcasts.
Or notebooks. I think that could be a cool one. But in general, I think bandanas. I've worked with a company that did bandanas that was selling a dog treat product, and they had bandanas made that you could put around your dog's neck, and I think there's a lot more out there available besides the standard tumbler
Koozies.
Or coffee cup.
I remember when you had a koozie for everything, it was kind of becoming absurd.
Is that why everybody has a drawer full of koozies?
Yeah. I think a lot of times too is like, if you're going to give somebody a branded gift, I kind of would, you kind of have to think about where you put your logo. Like if you're going to give somebody a custom pin, there's a question that I dealt with a couple of years ago. Does the logo go on the pin or the case that the pin comes in? Because there's a time to brand items when you want to give it as a gift, and other times when you just shouldn't, because it kind of looks like a shameless,
Yeah, but it like everything else we do in marketing. Have a strategy, have an idea behind it.
Yeah. Right, what's the goal? What's the purpose
you
of
should
it?
never do anything without having an end goal, and that should determine to a large degree, like if you're going to do premium items, if you're going to do merchandise, that should play a role in choosing what kind of merch you want to put out there. Let it, you're paying money for this thing, just like you would for any kind of ad. Right, everything's an ad.
Everything's an ad.
Get out of this ad. Make sure you pick an item that gives you the most bang for your buck.
Yeah, I think there's a delineation with B2B and B2C. B2B, if you can find something, a coffee cup isn't the worst option because everybody who's sitting at their desk likes to have a cup of coffee or tea or water even, something to hold it in. And it's just about keeping that brand in front of them. If they look over on their desk and they see your name, that's good. That's the whole point of the effort,
Great. All right, Nick, making an orange coffee cups coming your way.
We'll come up with something more creative than that. But, like I'm looking through this magazine and I see flashlights. Well, nobody carries around, they might keep it in their car. They might, put it in a drawer at home. But that's not really what you want if you're B2B, Maybe that's, magnets and things like that are popular. Everybody.
Mouse pads.
Yeah. I mean, notebooks, I don't know how many. We're all digital, I think, but a lot of people still carry around notebooks, and I thought they've got a cover on the cover of this magazine. They've got a popcorn bowl, and I'm like, that's that's different, that's unique. But at the same time, how often do you pull out the popcorn bowl at home?
We have several things in my house we use as popcorn bowls. So,
right. I mean, you grab whatever's around, not necessarily. Eat it straight out of the bag,
But I
if you're
I do think it does.
Yeah. Well, we just lost that audience segment.
Well, I'm a bad guy, so I'm insulting.
I mean, I do think if you can tie it in somehow with how the overall message you want to project, it sure helps. It sure helps. I mean, if it's something that people use frequently, then you've got we're back to the frequency message again. Having your identity on something that people use frequently. Well, there's definitely value in that. But if you can tie a larger message into it, it makes you look smart to your end customer, and they appreciate that. That's what they appreciate. It's not so much that they appreciate the item itself. They appreciate the thought behind why.
And I think the utility of it, I've heard plenty of people comment about getting swag at conferences and things like that. And the things that people appreciate the most is something that they can genuinely use, not just toss in a drawer and say thanks. That's why I'm not a big fan of pens, because I don't really care what pen I'm writing with. Just give me something that writes. I think, I love the earbuds idea. I think, everybody's kind of transitioning right now from the wired headphones to the wireless earbuds, and having those in like a branded little holding case is what this print shop's offering. And I think for promoting a podcast, especially, and for us, we use the podcast as a vehicle for the overall brand. I think that's a cool idea. I haven't seen.
Yeah, I think one of the things to notice about if you're trying to decide for merchandise to buy for your company that has your brand on it, it is audience specific, and is it useful? That's the thing that I always like, not to be too utilitarian about it, but there's got to be some use that the people you're going to give it to will get out of it. Pens get thrown in a drawer, koozies get thrown in a drawer. What can they use that actually is useful that they would? Yeah, seriously.
That's become more popular lately, especially with Mac, kind of driving or Apple driving the aux cables out.
So if you can think about that, and if that's what your audience is using, great. If you own a gym, maybe koozies are fine. Maybe that's here's a water bottle with the gym logo on it. That makes perfect sense. But in other instances, like, hey, we're NerdBrand. Here's a water bottle with our logo on it. Huh? So
you're like a cooler. I see coolers in here, like the fold-up chairs or whatever that you put in the bag for camping and such. For an REI or a Patagonia, makes perfect sense. For a branding marketing agency, probably not. What did it do specifically? I know they have, I guess, action figure type things. What else do they have?
I didn't look up the list of products that they did, but I do know that given how much money it made, let me see here. I don't have a list that they actually did. I know they did. Okay.
I'm sure the mask got plenty of.
Yeah, you got masks, T-shirts, hats, inflatable pool toys was one.
Here's an It Monopoly and Clue board game.
I'd really like to know what they sold or selling.
Huh. I mean, how many bags of red balloons can you sell if it's like got an It label on it? That's a thing.
I do see a lot of It T-shirts. T-shirts are I mean, as far as merchandise goes, especially for movies, that still seems to be a big moneymaker. I mean, Lord knows how many superhero T-shirts I've got.
Yeah. Well, I've seen T-shirts also move from having a screened typography words. Hello, Moto.
Hello. I turned that off. I don't know how it's still working.
It's haunted.
But yeah, it is. Yeah, he's calling. But yeah, it's kind of moved from typography to screened words to just images. So instead of saying like the scariest movie of all, blah blah blah, on a T-shirt, it's probably just a black T-shirt with a red balloon on it. And then you recognize that as that's it. Haha. So anyway, yes, hopefully that helps. If you got any ideas about merch, again, you know where to hit us up and talk about it. We'd love to discuss it. Finally on the list is children. People are afraid of children.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, just for a little bit of context, I mean, children, clowns, old people, those three things specifically. What? It's not that people are scared of them. It's just when one of those things that isn't supposed to be frightening at all. I mean, they're supposed to be the antithesis of scary. It's the idea that something that should never ever be scary suddenly becomes frightening. It's an idea that's so off-putting. It's an idea that's so seemingly so unnatural that it's naturally scary because it's just the complete opposite of what it's supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially if it's got a true story behind it like this one. For this one, I picked out the movie Orphan. Now, Orphan is, again, spoilers, but I think that you can still watch it and I can say this and you're fine. So it is a true story. It's about there's a condition that's very rare where an adult actually does look like a child. And so this movie is about an adult that was adopted as a child into a family and turns out was not a child. Yeah. And so it actually happened. But as far as a marketing ploy for the movie, was more, it generated controversy because of this. I think they kind of got into people that, were sympathetic to those that have it. So the controversy was mostly generated from people who are in adoption centers or adoption groups. Like it caused them to kind of get triggered. So it must be difficult to fall in love with a child as much as you own it. I don't think Mommy Likes Me very much, Esther. And it's one of the, I think it's a quote from another movie. I didn't look that source up, but it is on Wikipedia. Quick takes, uproar over Orphan movie. Yeah, that was Los Angeles Times. So
they're probably, there's, I don't know if there's a stigma around it necessarily, but there's a little bit of a stigma around adoption still, and that probably didn't help.
Yeah. So, but I mean, this movie was, I picked it because it isn't terribly known. I mean, but it's not the only movie that's been, Mitch started off the podcast with The Exorcist. What it is about a little girl. Now, I know she's not adopted, but it's about a little girl that was possessed. So there you go. You have a child, right? Something that you said stuff coming out of her mouth verbally and physically that was just flat disturbing. You'll notice that, like I said, there's just certain tropes and stereotypes in movies. So do you guys have any movies that you know of off the top of your head that use kids as the, premise for the horror? I know of one right now. I'm waiting to see if you guys are going to mention it.
The Orphan, the one that we just talked about.
Well, I mean,
that's probably the only one I've seen.
It might have been, we were talking about Hammer Studios. They did a movie called Village of the Damned, and it's like this village was invaded by these aliens, and they all take the form of these blonde-headed, blue-eyed children.
Yes,
well,
I was thinking Children of Corn, but yeah.
Again, it's the whole idea of these things that are supposed to be innocent and virtuous and lovable, and the idea that no, they're out to kill you is just so alien to your natural way of thinking that it scares the crap out of you.
Yeah. And all to kind of sum all of this up, it's like there is a, when you're developing a brand and that brand is going to be horror based, okay? You look at like what we've mentioned here. There's tenants, there's check boxes to check off. What are people scared of? What color hues to use? Things like that. All of this is very purposeful in our podcast for a reason, because blue is a hue that it's commonly used. There are some with yellows and greens and reds, but, it's kind of hard to I think for me to kind of spot those hues more than it is a blue. But there's the whole thing about color theory that kind of goes behind that. We can do a separate podcast on that.
The single red balloon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got like color and things. So it all comes down to understanding that people, places, things is what can make a great horror movie. And you have to kind of figure out how to put them all together, not overdo it, but to put them all together in a good way to kind of get the reaction you're trying to get. Because all of these things get an emotional reaction. And your brand, I still believe that it can draw an emotional reaction from people. It falls into the thing when we describe the why, how, what. The how is the emotional pull of why you do what you do every day. Why should I buy from you? Why this? It's that how kind of, we believe everything is an ad, and that for us is a very strong anchor in why we do what we do. It's just the what's as well. And because we believe everything is an ad, well, what do we do? Websites, brand identities, logo design is a part of that, but it's so vast in what that covers. And like today, we talked a lot about merchandise. So, but colors and tactics. John's very tactical. I can let you speak to that. And all of this is kind of like builds a resume, I believe, for a tactic. If I was going to build a horror brand, what am I going to do? What kind of movie am I going to make? What kind of a brand am I going to build this around? Am I going to build it around, this scary tenet of, okay, I'm going to make a scary movie. The centerpiece is a kid. The kid's possessed. And Clark Kent has to investigate it. And John Constantine shows up. And I think that'd be a great Superman movie.
We should make a horror film about nerds.
I was going to say Revenge of the Nerds is already done, so I guess.
Yeah, we probably would. Couldn't do an acronym of it because that's too long. But anyways, I hope everybody enjoyed the discussion today. Halloween is coming up upon us very fast already. And we hope everybody goes out there. If you go out someplace to get candy, to go trick-or-treating, please be safe. Please wear a mask. Under your mask. A mask under your mask, I guess. It depends on what you're dressed up as.
I'm just going to throw candy out to the sidewalk.
You're going to be that guy that puts a bowl of candy out there, and it says, just please take one, when no kid's going to do that.
Hey, if it saves some people's lives.
Save people's lives by throwing candy out there.
Yeah.
That's the best I've ever used.
Yeah. We want to thank everybody for listening to our show. We had an outstanding just growth in our audience. We really appreciate our new fans, followers. We are going to be hopefully soon able to, the three of us in a room, record together to resolve some of the audio issues, syncing and things that happen, because we are doing this through an app, as you heard at the beginning. I'm not going to do another ad for that. You listeners have already faithfully listened through that once. But we want to thank, we really do thank you guys for your support. We love our customers that we work with. You go to our website and check that out. We give them big shout outs. We love these people and we love working with them and appreciate their business tremendously. John, you got anything you want to plug or say or contribute to the show before I close it out?
I think we're good. I can't think of anything big unless you have something on your mind.
No, I think we're good.
Just like you said, just
good. Mitch, you?
Thanks to the listeners who've been listening and seem to be enjoying our podcast. This is why we do it. We feel like we have some things we can talk about that people, can enjoy hearing us yammer about, but maybe at the same time come away with some useful knowledge that might help them in promoting and moving their business forward. And thanks to our clients who stand behind us, and we stand behind them, and we couldn't do what we do without them, and we sure do appreciate it.
Yeah, so if you're a business out there, if you've got an idea, if you need some help to kind of get some branding around it, you want to talk about it, talking's free. You can go to nerdbrandagency.com, hit contact, reach us, or you can go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast and find out more about the podcast. Contact us there. Listen to the various episodes.
Give us some direction on what you want to hear in future podcasts. That's one thing we definitely like to integrate more is more community guidance on the content.
Yeah. Give us some ideas. Give us some interaction. We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on all the social medias. John works really hard at putting that out there and that messaging. And so you can also reach us on that as well and send us a message. And we'd love to see like what you guys are thinking. Like, what would you like us to talk about in regards to nerd culture and branding and how it is branded? A lot of things happened this year that we didn't really get to do a podcast episode on. Like, we really didn't talk about either Comic-Con that came up, San Diego or New York, because, there wasn't a lot of news that kind of I was able to catch online out of it. I'm sure there was plenty of stuff that came out, especially the New York Comic-Con, but we didn't really get into that. We know there's a lot of movies that have been pushed off. A lot of the advertising we're seeing right now seems to be generated toward the online streaming shows coming up. So we will be talking about some of that and how that's advertised. The irony of an online streaming show advertising on a streaming service. I just think that's funny. But anyways, check us out at nerdbrandagency.com/podcast. And thank you for listening. And remember, everybody, keep your nerd brand strong.